Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, August 28th meeting of the Byram Hills Board of Education. We say the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So welcome a few days before back to school. It is really my honor and pleasure and privilege tonight to welcome you to the meeting. We have some very special guests, Greg Carlson's children, and we're going to do a tribute to our esteemed former colleague who we miss a great deal and was very special to us. Bear with us for a few minutes just as we get through some business, and then we're going to go to the most important part of the meeting, which is going to be the tribute. So with that, just a few things to mention. The meeting opened at 7 p.m. We went into executive session and we spoke about 6 items. The first was district matter, district revenue. The second was budget matter, fund allocation. The third, 3.3 budget matter, district insurance. 3.4 was a legal matter, individual employee. 3.5 personnel matter, retired employee. And then lastly, 3.6, which was a district matter, administrative recruitment. So with that, are there any comments from the public regarding any items that are not on the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we go to item 5, which is the adoption of our agenda for this evening. I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, motion passed. Next, for our consent agenda, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda for personnel, which is item 6, special services, item 7, and then item 8, which is our business items.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Okay, motion carried. And that, just to make special mention of one item that was on our consent agenda, which was a $35,000 gift to the district from the PTSA, which is really awesome. The board visited Coman Hill today, and we saw there was a courtyard in the middle of Coman Hill that has some really nice outdoor space that's been unused for quite some time. And with that $35,000, it's going to go a long way to sprucing that space up so it could be a usable space for the kids. And I'm sure it'll be used in a lot of great ways and bring the outdoors to them. And we look forward to seeing that space once the money's put to good use. So we thank them for that. And it also should be noted that we visited all the school buildings today, as we typically do before school starts, to ensure that everything's ready. And we're very proud to report that everything is not only ready, but looks outstanding.
Yeah,
each building has some really dramatic improvements that are really going to make an impact to our students in positive ways. So we were excited by what we saw, and we look forward to all the students seeing it on the first day of school.
And if I might take the opportunity to thank Steve Thompson and his crew, who were here at very early morning hours and late at night throughout the summer. Really dedicated professionals, and when you go into each building and they were showing us the work that they were doing today, they were so proud of it, and that's what makes us happy to be at Byram Hills, to have so many people taking such pride in their work. But Steve, it was a Herculean task to pull off what you did this summer.
Thank you.
And I, for one, appreciate it, but I know our community and our children will really, really benefit from it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Every year, Steve.
Your team has certainly made a direct impact that each and every student in the district will see and will enjoy over the course of the year and many years to come. So really
Every year, right around about 2 weeks ago, people walk around and there's no way we could be ready to open school.
Yeah.
And the rumors start circulating, is school going to open on time? And every year, Steve, you come through with flying colors. And we count on that. So thank you.
Let's not let this year be the one.
Yeah, don't go on vacation over the next few days. Yeah.
There's no vacation in the summer for Steve. Yeah.
All right. So with that, we go to our tribute.
Yes, to our tribute. So forgive me if I look down at my notes every once in a while, but there are so many important points that I need to remember and express tonight. First of all, it's an honor to be paying tribute to Greg Carlson. Not only was he one of the most well-respected business officials, he was a dedicated colleague. He was a true friend to people who worked here. And tonight, I first want to welcome his children, sitting in the opposite order of age, Jeffrey, Melinda, and Brandon. I knew your father very well, and I know that nothing would have pleased him more than to see the three of you. And I said I wasn't going to cry, and when I feel like it, I'm just going to do that. We joke about that. The four of us joke. But Greg began his service to Byram Hills in 1999, and he successfully saw this district through 18 budget cycles, which, unless you're Jim Reese, is an incredible amount of budget cycles to dedicate to one district. And in truth, I don't know so many business officials who were dedicated to one school institution for that amount of time, and he was. He was proud of the work he accomplished. He was proud of the results of the business office. And today I see that every one of his business office colleagues is here for his tribute. He was really proud of the staff. And that AAA Moody rating was a reflection not on him, but on the work of the people who worked with him. And he expressed that constantly. He was a business official, but Greg was also a teacher. And many people thrived under his tutelage. I do know that he served as past president of ASBO, which is the Association of School Business Officials. Last Friday, there was actually a 2-page article the organization published celebrating Greg's contributions. And in 2017, Greg was the recipient of the Philip Fredenberg Award for Outstanding Service, and that's their most prestigious honor. He was also the SBO of the Year. What I love is they dedicated 2 pages to pictures, and this is a New York Association of School Boards officials. So he was renowned in the region. Tim Kaltenecker and I have been, going through applications of people who are interested in filling these very big shoes. It's important to note that one of the applicants wrote a cover letter that was a tribute to your father. Anyway, okay, stop. Okay, so at Byram Hills, Greg was a teacher to so many people here too. He was a teacher for me in particular. I was like his greatest student, like the rain in Spain, was mainly on the plane. I was that.
If you keep tearing up, I'm going to call you Jackie Taylor.
No, so, okay, bring it together, woman. So a number of years ago, I started asking Greg financial questions because I realized that I didn't have the capacity to understand everything that was being presented. So without fail, Greg decided that he was going to start tutoring me. And every week, at least once or twice a week, he would bring me something he was working on, and he would explain it to me. The logic, the planning behind it, and it was detailed. He would practice his budget slides with me, and he would practice his budget slides with the business office, right? How many times have you seen that? And Greg didn't need to practice his slides. Let that be known. Greg was doing it because he wanted all of us to be a part of a bigger picture. And he was so successful in doing that. Before I was appointed as superintendent, Greg allowed me to graduate from the Gregg School of Economics. And he told me that I was officially ready. He said, "You have graduated and you are officially ready." Tonight we have so many of Greg's friends and colleagues here paying tribute to him, show him our respect and our gratitude. I'm just grateful that while Greg was here, we all showed him that. I want to open the tribute a little bit to Ira Schulman, who has spent close to 2 decades working with Greg.
Yeah.
I would also like, if anybody else from the board, for this to be a little more natural, and anyone who would like to add any words may do so also. And then at the end, we do have a special tribute to give you on behalf of the district.
Thank you, Jen. Usually when board members address people at the board, we do it seated. But to me, as a sign of my honor and respect for your dad, I'm going to deliver these remarks standing up. So I think he deserves to be spoken about and on your feet, at least. This is how I feel about it. I go back a long way with your dad. We started pretty much at the same time, 20 years ago. I remember his predecessor. I remember Greg came in. I remember talking to him a few minutes, and I said, well, this guy knows what he's doing. He really is smart about these business things. And Greg saw this district through a period of remarkable growth. I mean, from 1999 into the end of the following decade, I mean, this school district really boomed. And managing the business affairs of a district that's going through such an enormous growth cycle is truly a difficult challenge. And Greg managed it easily. Your dad was very, very smart. Your dad was very, very perceptive. And your dad had to work with many different superintendents. Some he got along with better than others. But I mean that seriously, some he got along with better than others. But Greg was smart enough to understand and was able to focus on the dynamic between the administration and the Board of Education and how that works, and how it works to create a functioning budget, how it works to create a functioning school district. And Greg was very perceptive about that, and Greg was very perceptive about his dealings with the Board of Education. When you dealt with your dad, you never felt that he was talking down to you. You never felt that he was saying, oh my God, do I have to explain this again? To the contrary, he was eager to explain it again. He was happy to explain it again. He was happy to talk about things that came as naturally as tying his shoes to him, but to us sounded like it was in Sanskrit. But Greg took the time every year to explain it to us. I mean, I used to always kid around with Greg when he put on his the slides of the budget. He put on the true values slide. I go, oh, Greg, this is my favorite slide. They were still 46. You know, it's a great number, Greg. We're staying there. And we talk about, I always kid around with your dad about, oh, you're going to go through the equalization formula, Greg. We're going to have to sit through that again. But every year he explained it perfectly. So everybody, even if you never heard of it before, you knew what the equalization formula was and how it affected the district's budget. And that's because your dad was a teacher. He really was. He just wasn't a business administrator. He just wasn't a friend to Byram Hills. At the end of the day, your dad was a teacher, and a very, very good teacher. I know that when the illness grabbed a hold of your dad, what he really wanted to do was come back here. And we know that. We knew nothing gave him more joy than to spend the time with his Byram Hills family. Because that's what it was. It was his Byram Hills family. This wasn't friends. This wasn't superiors we reported to. This was a family. This was the Byram Hills culture we had. And your dad was a major part of it. And personally for me, not having your dad sitting over there is a great loss. It's a great personal loss for me, and it's a great loss for the Byram Hills School District. And I think that when you have a moment to turn around and see everyone who's gathered here in tribute to your dad, that should just tell you at the very minimum how he was respected and how the district relied on him to do his job and do it so well. Greg not only was smart in terms of the applicable accounting procedures and the applicable state regulations, which would fill a phone book, but your dad had great instincts. And his great instincts paid off because there were times when we never knew we put on while during the tenure of your dad, there were several significant bond issues that the voters of this school district allowed us to borrow. And your dad was very perceptive in when was the right time to refinance those obligations. That's not something you see in a book. That's something you have to figure out, and you have to almost go a little bit with your gut instinct. You have to look at trends, and your dad nailed it time after time. And because he did that, he saved the district millions of dollars by his savvy refinancing of the district debt. And nobody puts, posters on the wall for that. You don't get headlines in the Journal News. But what you get is the respect of those who you deal with day to day. And we know because your dad was so in tune with what had to be done, he performed his job admirably. And because of these savings and because of just so many other things your dad did, which, if we talked about them all, probably the meeting would continue tomorrow morning. He really made the district a better place. And I don't know if there's a better thing you can say about someone who works at a school district. He left the district better than he found it. And your dad really did. I know he was looking forward to retirement. He could retire after I did, I told him. But
he was retiring with me.
Yeah, well,
That was
with
the
you.
original plan.
He
Well, not with me.
He
but-
was, you know, and I don't want to say anything, but he did owe me some ski lessons. He promised that he promised to take me up to the mountain and teach me how not to kill myself. But he was a good man. He was a smart man. He was a perceptive man. He was a man where his word was his bond. And when you deal in the Board of Education and you deal with administrators and you deal with school districts and you deal with public officials, to say that your word is your bond, aren't many higher compliments that we can bestow upon your dad as that. So, Brandon, Jeffrey, Melinda, I know that it's very bittersweet for you to be sitting here, because I know it's how wonderful it is to hear these words of praise, well-deserved praise being lavished on your dad. On the other hand, your dad can't be here to hear them. We wish he were. We wish he would be spending more years with us at our table. It wasn't to be. But please understand from the bottom of our hearts that your dad was a Byram Hills hero. He did wonderful work for us. His memory will not be forgotten. And as long as there's a Byram Hills School District, you three are always welcome to come back here anytime, just to talk about Greg, to walk and see what he created. Just go to all these schools. And we took a bus tour today, and so much of that is really how your dad helped. Because all those bond issues that were passed years ago, your dad was instrumental in. So he did it all. He was a fine, good man, and we are the poor without him. But thank you for coming and sharing this evening. I will miss your father very much.
I would just add a few points to what was an incredibly moving and eloquent speech. We appreciate both of you and your kind words. When I first met Greg and I joined the board, it was about 4 years ago, I knew a lot about finance, but not a lot about school finance. And I will tell you that he really had the patience, the intellect, the fortitude, the desire to truly be that teacher. And if I can think about all the years that he served and all the board members that he got up to speed on school finance, really made an incredible impact on us, because it allowed us to be able to be in a position to ultimately, do our civic duty. And it was just an incredible experience, learning from your father. The second thing is that it's really easy, I think, when you're sitting in a school district to make short-term decisions. It's very difficult to make long-term decisions. And as Greg thought about our balance sheet and thought about our budgets, he was never thinking in a snapshot. He was always thinking of the long term. And I think that makes him truly unique and is really a great part of the reason that we sit here today in a situation where, as hard as the world of school finance is, we are in, I think, the best position we can be given the overall environment because of the many, many decisions that he helped inform through the years, and in many cases that he made through the years. And then the third thing, perhaps the most important thing, is character. Because when you are sitting on a board and you're looking at the person that is ultimately charged with business, you need to just have that extreme sense of confidence and the ability to rest assured that not only are things being done appropriately, but they're being done smartly and with all of the regulations in mind. And Greg, the way that he conducted himself, whether it was when we had the elections at HCC, where in the most professional way he would do the vote counts and make sure that the whole process was followed to a T.
Really, I couldn't get him to speed up. He made me crazy.
Or ultimately how he conducted himself.
And he had a sense of humor for you for 20 years.
He did.
Was there at least 1 year where he came out with the vote count and said, "Sorry, Ira, you lost"? Just kidding.
No, that never happened.
But sitting in the room with him was just a privilege, and being his partner ultimately was a privilege. So we really will miss him dearly. But the impact that he had sitting around this table and with all the decisions he made through the years, I think will be felt not only in our memories and the way we conduct ourselves, but also in the decisions, in the financial decisions he made that will impact the district for many years to come.
I'd like to also add, I mean, it's funny because we didn't compare notes on what we were going to say, but we all have a similar story that I felt to me also that your father, Greg, was a mentor, that he was the consummate teacher. And, as Scott was saying, you get all these new board members that come in every few years, and he never tired of getting us all up to speed as fast as we could, with such patience. And he always gave us confidence in his demonstrated integrity and his forward thinking, and always looking to save the district money, always, and be assured of that. Of course, highly respected in the industry, and I just want to elaborate on him personally. He had a great sense of humor. He was a great storyteller. I would love to talk to your father, and he had given me a piece of advice a few years back that really had an impact on me. It was before I had to give a speech. It was first time I was president of the Board of Ed, and I had to give a speech. It was graduation, so I had to talk in front of a lot of people, and I was probably nervous. And he said to me as we were walking out there, to walk out on stage, he said, just remember, when you speak to people, just always speak from your heart, and you could never go wrong. And honestly, that little piece of advice really resonated with me. And I will always remember that little piece, and I will always remember his stories. And you have had an incredible father, and thank you for sharing him with us for all these years.
I'd like to just add a little piece. I didn't know Greg that well because I'm one of the newbies on the board. But my first year on the board, he was just so great in explaining everything. I'm like, Scott, I do not have a background in finance. And the numbers with the budgets were very overwhelming, and he was so patient in talking me through everything and teaching me stuff. But his sense of humor was the best. When he would talk about numbers and budgets, and he would get so excited about it. It was great. I've never seen somebody get excited about this stuff before. It was really funny, and I'd be sitting over here nervous because it's my first year and I'm on camera, and I'd be like spilling my water, and I'd look up every time, and he would be laughing at me. And I knew I was going to look up and see that little pet giggle, and it was, it always kind of made me feel better about whatever silly thing I'd just done. Great loss to all of us.
I can add, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Me and I started at the same time, and my background's PTSA president. We would have to ensure that all the parents would come out to vote. The vote is very important. We have to pass the vote, the budget vote. And until I started on the board a couple of years ago, I didn't really understand what the budget meant and how much went into it. And seeing your dad, explain the slides and go over everything in such an effortless way. Like I know so much effort went into it, but the way he would speak, you really understood everything that was going on, and it was so comforting to know. But one of my favorite stories with your dad is that he was really not feeling great. You can see he was losing weight. His suit was getting a little big on him, but he came here. He was so dedicated, and he would go through. We'd ask questions, and he'd just sit there and explain everything. And we'd start to worry. He took some time off to deal with his illness, and I ran into him at DeChico's market one day, and he was in sweatpants. He wasn't in his suit. And we were online, and we just started talking about the different items we were buying. We were comparing them, and he just started laughing, and he was in great spirits, and he said, I can't wait to get back, I'm coming back. And he was so dedicated. He came back, and he worked as much as he could, and you should be so, so proud of the man that he was, really. And I know you are, but I love that. I love seeing him in his sweats and just happy and excited to get back to work. And we are going to miss him very, very, very much.
I think echoing everyone's thoughts and feelings about your father, sometimes there weren't so many easy questions. Some of us do have a finance background, and we'd go deeper into something with him. He never got rattled. He never, no matter what the question was, whether it was easy and he would have to explain that, he would explain the details. If it was more detail-oriented and deep down into some legal ramification of why we have to move money, he just explained it. He was very, I've worked with a lot of different people, and I never saw him get rattled, and that was kind of really a tribute to his expertise on business finance. So, really special. And then the other thing is his presentations. He gave that presentation, but every time, that's a dry topic. I think there's not that many people that deliver that with consistency. That wasn't fancy or he didn't try and overdo it or anything. He delivered it with precision, to get the point across. And I thought, again, it was really well done, and he will be missed.
I'm going to echo everything everyone said. Your father is larger than life, and he will be remembered as being larger than life. He took pride in everything he did. He made everyone feel comfortable. I met him when I was on the Education Foundation 6 or 7 years ago. We were going through an audit. He walked us through every step of the way. He made us feel so comfortable with every decision. And he was like a pillow. Like, you knew, like, you could put your head down and you knew he was going to always catch you. That you were never going to fall with him around. So we truly do feel your loss. He truly is bigger than life for all of us. And thank you for sharing him with all of us.
And I bet it's not common for children, although you're adults, to know the impact that a parent has had on so many different people. I mean, I think of my own father, and I know his impact. He's still with us today. I know his impact on us as children. I know his relationships with our relatives. And although he had a very robust career, I know nothing about how he affected those people. So, if we could offer you anything tonight, it's an open lens to the person that he was to us. And we trusted him implicitly. And his trust, as you said, was his bond. So if we can open that up to you in any way and you could see that window, it's very different than what his role was as your father, so to see that level is pretty spectacular. So tonight, although it's with a heavy heart, but it is with the greatest respect and admiration, the Byram Hills School District and the Board of Education would like to present an honor to the three of you, and we have one for each of you, so you don't have to share this. I was one of 3 children, so I get that. I had to use bicycle parts, but anyway. It is a beautiful medal, and it says Byram Hills School District, Armonk, New York, in honor of Gregory E. Carlson, 19 years of dedicated service, and we will say 19 years of being the most incredible colleague. So we are very proud to give this to you, and proud that your dad spent his career here.
You guys look so much fun.
I know.
They really do.
I know.
They
Yeah.
really do.
Thank you for coming tonight. Because hopefully it was meaningful to you, but it was certainly meaningful to us.
I'd like to share a little story about all of you. So, when I moved down here, when I was 18, after high school, moved down, and Dad's priority was not television at all. He didn't care about TV. He's like, whatever, home is just where you sleep. That's it. And so eventually, I convinced him to get cable. And the first thing he puts on and tries convincing me to watch is one of these. I'm like 18, I'm like, come on, Dad, like there's so many other options. You're like sharing all different anecdotes about everybody and his relationship with everybody. And I was like, oh man.
Our ratings are actually pretty good.
That's right, there were 2 people that year.
So,
Now we know who they were.
he was thrilled, and he thought of you guys more of a family than anything, and it was really nice, and it was really prevalent when he was trying to convince me of that. I'm like, okay, come on. So it was really heartwarming. I know he loved and cherished all relationships with each one of you.
I just want to add one thing, and this is a personal thing. When the superintendent told me that your dad had put my name on the list of people that he wanted you to hear from after he went, and that I was one of them, and I was to call you, I'm a pretty rough and tumble sort of guy. I live in a rough and tumble world in my job. But I want to tell you that was so deeply meaningful to me and emotional to me. I went home and it really took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do when I called and what I wanted to say to you. Because for someone to do it, like for your dad to do that and put that burden on me, I'm really not going to forgive him for it. But seriously, it really was among the more meaningful things that's happened to me in quite some time. And to have that conversation with you guys on the phone that day, you know, was something special, and I won't forget it. That's you know, as you move along a little bit in life, and I have the benefit of being a little older than your dad. Certain things pass by, and certain things really stay with you. That will stay with me, and your dad's friendship with me will stay with me. You know, and I hope you will look back as years go by for you, and we all wish you years of happiness and good health, that you will take immense pride in what your dad did here at Byram Hills, because you should. Please do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we
So should we-
adjourn so we
yes.
can hug them?
Well, that's adjourn for a hug.
Yeah.
We don't say that too many times.
Where,
Okay, so
Nice to do
no, that was really lovely. On to
was beautiful, Ira.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
heartfelt,
you too.
no doubt.
Thank
Okay,
you.
very genuine,
Jen and Myra.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
both.
Thank you. He deserved it.
no doubt. So on to a more mundane topic, to be sure. Item 10, unfinished business, 10.1, charitable contributions. So just a quick recap on this. We had 2 meetings over the summer where we discussed the prospects of setting up a charitable gift reserve fund. We gave this the serious thought that it deserved, given that we had really dual responsibilities of, most importantly, protecting the district and thinking about what this would mean from the district from a fiduciary perspective, but also trying to do what we can to help our taxpayers. And we got deep into that diligence process and actually culminated into a couple of resolutions that are in the packet today. But as we always knew, there was a clear risk. The IRS has come out, and on August 23rd, they issued proposed regulations providing rules around this. And in essence, what they came out with would mean that if a taxpayer made a donation to this charitable entity that we would set up, then the federal deductibility of that contribution would be very small. It would basically be just the 5% that we would take for administrative costs, and they would not get deduction on the full amount that they put into the vehicle. And so therefore, as it stands right now, although there'll be public comment period and there could be challenges, and New York State, New Jersey, Connecticut are coming out and saying they could certainly challenge this in court. At the moment, there is no clear path that we see to at least provide taxpayers with the ability to do this and get federal tax deductibility. And so I think on that front, what I would say, and I open it up for a broad discussion, is that this is something that we need to continue to follow very closely, because it's certainly not over, and there will be some activity clearly, and we'll see how things turn out, both in terms of these, what happens from a litigation perspective against the federal government with the states, as well as if the state comes up with anything else that we need to consider. We stand ready to evaluate things and obviously make the right decision based on the criteria that we all talked about, which is being a fiduciary of the district and also trying to do whatever we can to ease taxpayer burden. So with that, I would open it up, but I would say that based on the news, that this unfortunately would have to be tabled for the moment.
No, I would agree.
Great.
Okay.
I'm glad we had the discussions, and
For
we
sure.
will always be open to discussing this should new avenues become available for our taxpayers.
Exactly. Okay. So then item 10.2 is really just the fact that we have a board meeting calendar that was in the packet, and there are a couple of changes to note. The June 18th meeting has been changed to June 25th because graduation has been moved. And then there's also the addition of the 2 meetings that we had during the summer to talk about these tax issues and the condo conversion issue, the July 25th and August 8th meeting dates. So nothing we need to vote on, but just wanted to make everybody aware. That's,
So the date on the calendar is correct for graduation, correct?
The school calendar's always been
Is
correct.
correct, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, we go to item 11, which is new business. And I would want to open up a public hearing for the proposed transfer of funds from the reserve for retirement contributions to the capital reserve. And with that, to have a discussion, and maybe if you want to lead us off, and or Jim.
So the purpose of the hearing is because when we have reserve funds, we actually have to conduct a hearing to transfer those funds. Reserve funds have many limitations to them, hence the term reserve funds. Our purpose in moving the funds is because we had allotted a certain amount to this reserve, the reserve for retirement contributions. This doesn't mean that we are taking away from the retirement monies allocated for our retirees at all. We budget a certain amount every year, and sometimes when it falls below the mark, we do wind up with an excess in that reserve. We had the capital reserve that was started last year, and this is a perfect opportunity for us to put it into the capital reserve so that as much as we can continue to take care of our school facilities, we will do so without causing excess taxation on our public. So this was a prudent move.
We would like to hear from you.
It's also a move that was recommended by our auditors last year. The controller has been going around the state doing state audits, and one of the areas that they're focusing on is fund balance and reserves, and whether districts are holding more in particular reserves than necessary. Our auditors felt that the reserve that we had for the retirement contributions was higher than what was necessary. And because we did have a newly established capital reserve that was voter authorized a year ago, May, the recommendation from him was to move some of this money from that reserve into the capital reserve. And Dr. Lamy is correct, we have to have a public hearing before we move money out of the reserve for retirement contributions. And we're recommending that we move $5 million. That would still leave us over $4 million in the reserve for retirement contributions. So still adequately funded, and it will give us a nice boost in the capital reserve.
And I think it's important to know that if we had the ability to have a TRS reserve, teacher's reserve, then that would certainly be an option that we want to consider.
Exactly.
What it's in right now is just the ERS reserve, which is obviously a segment of our overall employees and retirees, not all of them. And so we do have limited options in terms of
Right.
that. And there's certainly been talk of the legislature moving forward with the TRS reserve, but it has not happened yet, and we have no visibility on when it's going to happen.
I think this year they came the closest to
Yep.
doing it.
Yep.
And they have, you're right, they've been pushing this for the last several years. And if they do finally establish it, I think that we still do have some leverage or some room in reserves where we can start funding a reserve for teachers' retirement system also.
Once the money's transferred into the capital reserve, then I guess I'm assuming there are two requirements, one of which is that it has to be used for capital projects, and then two, we have to go out with a vote to spend the money like we did on the fields.
Exactly, yes.
And that requires a public vote.
Yes.
Yep.
So the one target for those funds is the potential field replacement, or is that?
That's right.
That was already in that
Yes,
fund.
the proposition was,
There was only 1.4 million in the capital reserve account currently, so right?
there's 1.4 was what was in the reserve, and then we did pass a resolution in December to fund the reserve, the capital reserve, by 2.5 million. And what we've asked the board to do is rescind that resolution because we didn't hold a public hearing prior to the resolution. So now we're proposing, again, now the public hearing. We're proposing transferring $5 million into the capital reserve. So the reserve would have the field project has been estimated, field and track, at about $1.68 million. So we would have adequate money to address that. And on the capital reserve, it was originally established for $10 million, and that's the upper limit. So we have to subtract that 1.68 from that. So we can't go up to 10 million now. Once we spend that 1.68, we can only go up to, whatever, 10 million minus 1.68.
And you'd have to go out and get authorization if you want to go higher? Is that what?
If you want, you can establish a second capital reserve.
Okay.
You have some flexibility in adjusting this one. It's I believe it was established for 10 years, so it's, going forward. Some districts have established a second one for a particular purpose. So there are some options going forward with that also.
And ultimately, it's up to the voters whether or not something's funded or not, but are there any time limitations in the capital reserve? So if this money goes in, then are there a certain amount of years that you have to spend the money?
10 years,
10 years.
is what the reserve was established for, and then it can be reauthorized, obviously. If you don't spend between now and the 10 years. So.
And it can be for redoing a roof, or for a field, or for a new building, or for anything related to capital?
Yes, the resolution that the voters authorized a year ago in May was fairly open, so it's,
Broad-based
renovations.
capital improvements.
Pardon me?
Broad-based.
Broad-based capital improvements, right.
The reserve for retirement contributions account, you're mentioning the balance will be approximately 4.6 million or
It's,
something like
right,
that.
still over $4 million.
So seems like a sizable amount. We're moving more than half of the reserves that were in there. That seems like a pretty significant overage. I know there's a lot of complexities around the determinants of what's required by the district, the funding requirements, and those run the gamut, the actuarial studies, and then that's essentially mandated down to us. But that seems like a pretty wide margin, right? I mean,
Yes, we budget the one line in the budget for our obligation to the employees' retirement system. So although the district has had this reserve for retirement contributions for a number of years, we really have not used that to fund our obligation. So basically, it's been sitting there. And I guess the idea with the reserves, as we talked about with the TRS, you have spikes and valleys depending on the economy and contributions and interest rates and the whole gamut. So the idea is if you have a spike a particular year, you can use the reserve to help out so you don't have the peaks and valleys in your tax rate. So, but fortunately, the district has not had to tap the reserve for that purpose.
Ira?
And I will move to authorize the transfer of funds from the district's reserve for retirement contributions account to the capital reserve account in the amount of $5 million.
Just hold that for 1 second, but because the only other thing I want to say is just to make sure there's no other comments from the public.
Well, you can still make the motion, have it seconded, just get it on the table for discussion purposes.
So I'm just going to close out the public hearing to the extent that we're done and with the discussion. So I will officially close out the public hearing, and now we can move to.
I will second the motion.
Okay, excellent. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. So that takes us to 11.3, which is committee assignments. And in the packet, there's a series of committee assignments for this year. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise them. But I think it's based on the discussions we've had. And just the one thing to note, because it is different this year, is that with the Byram Hills Education Foundation meetings, we decided to, instead of assigning 2 liaisons, rather to split the meetings up so that we all have the opportunity to be in those meetings and understand what the foundation is doing and meet the members of the foundation board. And so there's a schedule of dates, and to the extent that someone can't do a date, which is perfectly understandable because you were not checked with around these dates, then we can just swap and obviously figure that out as we go along and be flexible so that we cover all the meetings.
The dates were randomly assigned by Janine. We
Yep.
had nothing to do with the dates.
Yep.
I actually do like that idea, and that I sat with it for a little while. It's a good approach.
It's so,
Give us,
and when we walked through the schools today, I mean, you can see
Exactly.
so many of the projects have been funded through the foundation, and there's just a constant flow of ideas and of issues that the foundation, wants to think through, and so it'll be great just to have everybody's input in that.
So will that be, that's actually one of the committees I've never served on. So is that disruptive to the Education Foundation to have different members from the board of ed, or is that going to be fine? Is there anything that we need to know?
I spoke to
Representing
the
the board?
president and the chairman. I was the past president. I'm sitting between two past chairmen and a fellow board member, and it's so much better to have all of us there because you really don't partake in the meeting. You really are, you can obviously bring some things to the table, but you're more able to understand what they're deciding on and what their views are and bring it back to our table for discussion.
And also offer any, if they have questions
Board
with
views.
answers that you, to the best of your knowledge, can, give.
Usually defer those to Jen.
Yeah,
Jen is at every
Right,
meeting.
Jen's
Jen's
there.
at every meeting as well.
Yeah.
But we have regularly given very brief updates based on public board
Yeah.
meetings in terms of what the board's been focused on, and when it's budget season, obviously just making sure that they have information about the budget, which also Jen is going to obviously be pivotal in.
I think the enthusiasm around, what motivates them and the work they're doing there, I think it's great to have different members there to see that energy too, and to meet some others in the district.
I think it's a good idea. I'm sorry we didn't do that earlier. I think it's a good idea.
It's just
But the problem was, years ago, we had board representatives, and there was always an issue whether they were voting members, non-voting members, and there was always an issue saying, look, you're not, you have to take instructions from the board. You're not there to, invent your own way to go. You're representing the board, so the board should give you instructions on certain issues. But I think doing this is wise.
That's a good point too, because
Teachers are not-
at this now, we have moved to a system where we do not vote at those meetings.
Right,
Which
We
is
don't.
which is the right
We
way
do
to,
not
right way to
now.
go.
Which is
Yeah.
much better.
Totally.
And sometimes when the teachers leave the room, if you feel like it's inappropriate to leave the room, you can leave the room.
Yeah.
The teacher representatives.
Yeah.
Thank you. Committee assignments look fine for me.
For me as well.
Great.
Just want to correct my last name spelling. There's no space.
That's important.
In your
We'll fix
world.
that.
In the digital world, that space causes a lot.
All right, so should we move on to item 11.4, board goals, which everybody received a draft of, and I'm going to pull mine out. So maybe Jen, do you want to start?
Love to. So first, I thought it was a really good idea that we always keep the mission statement in mind when we're creating board goals, and that mission statement has rested on other sheets of paper and not this. So I think to use it as our guide, it's important to keep at the top of our board goals from now on. Just really, we're going to provide students with the means, knowledge, and opportunity to excel in order to become productive and responsible citizens of the 21st century. And knowing that students are our focus with everything we do thereafter. So last year, we had quite robust goals. We had 5 goals, and the board was very successful in meeting those goals. And as I started to look at the goals for this year to make suggestions, it occurred to me that many of those goals really need to remain. Our goals should be consistent. They shouldn't necessarily vary from year to year. We should have a set of consistent goals. And one should always be about teaching and learning. One should always be helping the board with the fiduciary responsibilities, education reform and advocacy, and leadership development and succession planning. So if we keep those 4 main goals, of course, everything can change underneath those goals. So we will have new bullets each year to define, well, considering those 4 goals are important to the board, now what are we trying to do underneath those goals for this year? And I think it keeps consistency and it prevents us from letting really important matters fall off. I know that last year we were wondering, and even the year before that, should advocacy remain on the agenda? And I think we've all learned this year that advocacy is here to stay. And, debating whether things should go on and come off. Last year as my first year superintendent, I looked over board goals for 10 years to say what has changed, and things changed. And things will change, but I think they need to change under the pillars that are going to be board goals moving forward. So I propose that the blurb that occurs under each Goal is something that we adhere to. I mean, we may change over time, but I would like to see those remain the same and the bullets underneath them change. So first goal for excellence in teaching and learning, again, with encouraging effective practices to support that excellence through dialogue with the administration, our development of policy and implementation, and program support for student success. And then for 2018-19, we're really still looking at the student approach, student-centered approach to learning, the 21st century skills, and we really want them to support student global competency, leadership, and wellness. And these have been 3 of the largest goals that we've had as a district. So global competency and leadership, to continue to study this theme as it exists in our schools and in our programs through various venues. And I would like to see the board support a continued study of additional leadership experiences and opportunities for students through these programs. So this isn't something that we should say, well, we dedicated last year to leadership and to global competency, and that's where it ends. But now, where are we extending that K-12? We had many milestones last year, especially at the middle and high school levels. Student wellness, to really support positive social emotional learning of students, competencies, and continued partnerships that we have with Stanford, Yale, and the University of Michigan. And the district-wide data team, we started some great work with that last year in selecting the team, getting the team operational, and also selecting the dashboard. So we like the board to have as its goal the rolling out of that data dashboard, training, using a variety of types of data, setting goals, progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is so important. And it is something I don't know that we've tapped the potential of yet as a district. Do you want me to stop after each to see if anybody has any
that's a good
thoughts?
idea.
Yeah,
If anybody has any global thoughts or thoughts on the first,
Global
teaching and learning.
competency.
I mean, just to chime in on the first of all, I think the concept of keeping those broad-based, targeted goals, though, as in there, great, and then revising some of the, let's say, tactics around reaching those goals, right? So those goals might be the broad-based strategy, whereby those bullets are some of the tactics. One thing I would mention, obviously, global competency and the Global Scholars Program, there's nothing mentioned in here on science research, not that we don't have tons of effort around that as well, but the focus on taking a program that's been, I think mentioning a program that's been wildly successful and so significant in the district is still part of, it's not listed in that, just as we've listed out other components of this global competency. Again, I'm bringing it up for thought. I just wouldn't want to see such an amazing, successful program not be part of our excellence in teaching focus as well. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
I would comment that, for example, if you look at the goals, we sort of dropped STEAM, which is probably the first time in about 6 years.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
point where the curriculum gets to our usual continuous improvement cycle, that it doesn't necessarily need that ongoing attention of the board and support from the board. I would say with science research, we've been engaged in a 5-year study of that over the past few years, and we're getting to a point where we feel really focused on science research. We have a strong process for that.
Sure.
Not to say that it doesn't deserve some attention at some point,
Yeah.
but the question for me is, does the board want to be studying that and have us do some work around that we present to on a regular basis? Sometimes the focus of a board is to get our attention on it and to keep it at the forefront of our work, and possibly for future funding and things that may require the board's actions.
That's more about, that's exactly the point I'm making, not
Yeah.
even making a recommendation, but bringing up a core educational component, I think that's had a tremendous amount of success in being evaluated or not being evaluated, and if this is the, from a goal standpoint, I just wanted to bring that up for discussion. I thought it was important enough, given, how strong the program's been over the years.
I think we could do that. I think we have to think about the cycle of review, because there's so many other programs
Yeah.
also, and I think maybe putting a goal there that there will be areas that are reviewed, for lack of a better word. I mean, we don't need to review them, but we are assessing them constantly, and maybe to bring that information to the board.
Like for the math, for example, last year,
Right.
I'm not sure if it wasn't a goal, was it? But yeah, there were some major changes to it.
Right, which is part of the usual curriculum review cycle. And if
Right.
you remember, I don't know when we did that, it might have been last year, the year before, I presented a curriculum review cycle. That is part of my ongoing review that I look at every year and start rotating through an extensive review of all the curricular areas on a 5-year cycle.
So I guess the nuance here that I'm missing too is that there's a continued study in and around global competency. So none of these are at, there's no detraction from any of the other programs.
Right.
It's more from a goal standpoint, just this review and determining directionally where we're going with that. Especially, I'm just picking on global scholars as an example, something listed in there, we're still somewhat evaluating that as well, whereby certain mainstay programs such as science, research, are, I guess it's not a goal to evaluate that program at this point. I just was surprised to see that and, STEAM not included, because I don't think those things necessarily go away, but it might not be in a review cycle, so.
Maybe a suggestion is, if you look at the preamble to the 3 bullets for the 2018-19 school year, to add a sentence before that just makes the commentary that we're striving for continued excellence in all of our core academic areas, which includes science research, obviously all of the core academic subjects that we've had forever, and also technology. So it's not necessarily like something that is being actively worked on to develop something new like global competency, leadership, student wellness, and district data, but it's just stating maybe the obvious, but maybe it should be stated still, which is that we have all these unbelievably strong and important programs that we're not going to take our eye off the ball on, and they are still core to us. And
Well,
maybe,
I think having technology omitted or science omitted from any of these just seems missing to me. But again, I'm bringing it up for discussion. We don't really have to belabor on it too much. I just thought if it's, from my standpoint, as you said, Tim, it was the first time we hadn't mentioned that, I guess, with
Right.
respect.
Yeah, it was a conscious decision to
Yeah.
say, we've been looking at STEAM at the board level for 6 years. We feel like we have a handle on what we're doing and developing it, does it still need to be, I mean, if you want it, we can certainly.
They are
But this area
annual
here,
goals.
I mean, this
Yep.
is still fledgling. I mean, that's why it's here,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
this area is still
That's right.
fledgling. I mean, that's why it's here.
Right.
And when STEAM was introduced years ago, it's because that was really
Right,
in its
right.
kind of infancy.
So Global
Stage was
competence is
changing.
new, we're really
Right.
only in
Right.
our
So,
second year, third year.
Maybe
of
there needs to be
studying it.
a sentence in here as opposed to doing, what you're saying, putting a line about all of our other programs, just because these are newer in
that's fair.
our family of curriculum.
Yeah.
If you put the same things in every year as a goal, then you're never achieving that goal.
Right.
So I sort of don't mind that it's omitted, maybe we could bring it back again next year.
I like Robin's too.
Yes, so do I.
Yeah.
Because that gives us a reason why that is here. Because I thought that too when I first read that, Mike. I was like, why are we putting so much emphasis on this area? But it is because once it gets really embedded into our curriculum, we've got a well-oiled machine, then we're potentially onto something else.
And part of curriculum review would review the newer math and science programs like the engineering type.
Absolutely.
So that we're not hearing about it and not
Yeah.
starting to set roots in the ground for those. We're just focusing
Right.
on these programs.
For example, math, again, that wasn't necessarily a board goal, but it was part of my review process, and I brought that to you as we were starting to talk about changes. And, I still will talk to you about the change in the math program, which isn't necessarily a board goal, but part of my regular curriculum review process. So you'll continue to hear about the change in the math pathways and how that's going throughout time.
The other thing that I guess confused me for a second was that we lumped together global competency and leadership. These are not leadership opportunities in regard to global competency. They're two separate things, but it's together. Is that correct?
I had the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very
I guess we sort of view them together, but they are also separate in different ways. We view leadership as a global competence, but that's our bias maybe, or our own framework that we're using.
Oh, yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
because you bring
Sense.
those into the mentor classes and the peer leader classes? You're bringing all the global studies in?
Yeah, we feel by building leaders, you're building a global competence skill as leadership in our minds. That's
I like
our
that.
framework,
Okay.
but
I
I
understand
see.
that now.
yeah,
I
we
get
can
that.
certainly tease that out separately if you're more comfortable
No,
with looking
the
at
way,
them.
No, it makes
what-
sense.
what you said makes sense.
So I'm listening to what you're saying, and I almost wonder if some of the points you're making should go in the box for number one, the existing forever box. Mike, if you look at the way it reads, the board will encourage effective practices to support excellence in teaching and learning through dialogue with the administration, policy development and implementation, a review cycle of existing programs, and program support for student success. Then we have that review cycle in there, that is something that we're committed to, and it's not necessarily a bullet that falls below that could fall out. Because we do it. I mean, Tim is doing that review cycle every year.
I think that would.
That works.
Yeah.
And that would make,
That would
we
count.
continue to show you and present with you the curriculum review
Right,
cycle. and what
which you
we're
do
working on.
anyway.
And although I said that, we want those boxes to, the central focus to remain, things that we're doing right now, we may do next year also. We may look at that and say, and now we're seeing that it's missing this other component and we want to add something and build on that.
I had a goal that, I don't know if I should bring this up yet, I think it could fall under that. It doesn't really fall perfectly under excellence teaching and learning, but it kind of falls under district-wide data team maybe, is security, cybersecurity, privacy, school safety and security. I know that was a big focus last year, not because it was a goal, but because it was a little reactive. I feel like that is something I would like to see if everyone agreed. Somewhere on a goal. I feel like cybersecurity
I think it's more fiscal accountability in communications,
not data-wide.
not the excellence in teaching and learning.
Not data-wide. I guess I was thinking maybe data-wide
Right.
team, but maybe not.
What's the
Because of
goal?
the secure. That we are really focusing on security for online, the portal, cybersecurity.
Keeping up to date on the newest
Yeah, and that we-
safety measures for that.
I think it's a commitment.
I'm in favor of it, I just don't know if it's a goal. I certainly have no quarrel with it.
Focus on it, I think it's in a way critical. Privacy for our students and our faculty and what are our security measures. I know we've talked about it in general, but
Again, so what is the goal that we are, we're keeping up with best practices? I just want to get an
that's what I would
understanding
want it to
about
be.
what this goal is that we're doing. And I guess this to me is really more of an administrative assistance, because they're the ones who are going to come to us and say, here's what we do, here's what we think we could be doing, and what do you think about it, and how are we going to pay for it? Which is all right, but if that's where you see this heading.
I think it rises to a higher level of importance than what you're saying. I think it's everything. As everything is moving more toward data and online and the Google Classroom, everything like that, I'm not 100% confident that I personally have a full understanding of what our security measures are.
Or cybersecurity or
Cybersecurity and school
Yeah.
security as well. I mean, that's separate because it was
It's
something that we
it's
ended up
certainly
doing.
topical.
It is.
That's-
And both are,
absolutely.
both are.
It's certainly
And-
topical.
And we've obviously talked a lot about both, and and cybersecurity is forever changing, and as you mentioned, more and more is going on in the cloud, which means that it makes you more and more vulnerable, even though it's more powerful. But then with physical security, we've made clear, many changes and been thoughtful, but there'll continue to be work done around that, and just given the importance maybe and how topical both those issues are, maybe it's a goal that
Just so that we're
addresses
not-
both.
I will say, one of the few things that people will ask me about happens to be security.
Yeah.
It seems to be a topic that, I don't want to say it's in everybody's mind because my sample is pretty small, but it clearly is an issue that we've been grappling with, either overtly or tacitly over the last number of years.
Exactly. We've done a great job on it, but it has been reactive because of what's going on as opposed to us.
I'd like to see how it reads.
I don't know where it goes.
I think it falls under, if you don't have security with respect to cyber or actual physical security, you can't have excellence in teaching. So I think it probably falls as either, related to the data team or a separate bullet point within, within that. Because certainly cybersecurity could fall under the,
Could fall under a lot of
data
things.
Yeah, it
measurement or
could fall,
technology, but
Student wellness.
it's without a
Well,
doubt.
I'd be less worried about where it falls under, just to see how it
I mean, it could be a fifth
emerges.
bullet.
Yeah.
I mean, a fifth, I know we didn't want to do that. but
Well,
we
it
took
could be,
away-
it could be a fifth goal, which
I'm
is
not
no,
sure why it's not
Something that would be an
fiscal
ongoing-
accountability.
there's no crime.
I'm actually the mission statement, why isn't it something about keeping the students safe and in a secure, I mean, why is it not in the mission statement? Isn't that something that, it's not there at all, like that we can meet all these needs in a safe
Well,
and
we're
secure
providing them with the
environment?
means, and, right.
I mean,
There's an implicit need for security.
That's right.
right, so then why doesn't it have to be a goal? It should, I mean, it's a goal if we're having an issue. I mean, or it should be, right, implicit.
But I guess going back to the discussion of like, because it's a good one, of like what are the goals for? And I think, as Tim, I think, pointed out, it is for there to be some regular discussion over the course of a year on these topics to make sure that we're making progress and that we, you know,
Right.
we listen to what's happening and can give our input when appropriate. And on cybersecurity and definitely on physical security, it seems like this is it's a topic that this year feels like that would make sense.
I would just like to see us be proactive instead
I-
of reactive on these.
I'd like to see how it reads. I'm inclined to agree with them.
I'm not sure if it has as much to do with data as it has to do with us
No,
making fiscally responsible
I'm
choices.
less-
Maybe it
Right.
just
Or it's
is,
its own category.
I'm less
His own
concerned
Yeah.
about whether we have to shoehorn it into one of the four
Right.
or create a fifth. So be it. I mean, every year we seem to have a discussion, but we shouldn't have five.
Right.
I don't want to get tied up in that stuff.
Quite
Let's see how it
frankly,
reads
yeah.
first.
Yeah, that's
We'll
fair.
determine whether it goes in one of these, or it creates something else. This is a goal for this year. It's not a goal for 2 years from now. We're not saying it's going to continue. Let's see how it reads for this year.
and you know what, we're not approving them today, we'll see what it looks
Right.
like, we can have a discussion again and see if
Of
we
where
Yeah.
it goes.
Exactly.
Right, it could fall under advocacy because there's been a lot of advocacy on
That's
this
right.
issue
That's right.
recently.
That's
We even
very
had
true.
students
That could.
advocate on behalf of the
That's
CED.
true.
It just,
That's
look,
true.
I appreciate
Thank
the
you for bringing it up.
concept of having these blocks, but these blocks can't necessarily dictate what we want as our goals. These are a tool, they're not an end in of themselves.
Right.
So let's see how Robin's thinking works into a goal, and then we'll decide where to put it. But to me, the issue is the interesting point at the moment, not where it's going to fit on the sheet.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, okay. So
I like that.
that's helpful. You want to go on to?
Fiscal
number two?
accountability and communications. The primary function is direct oversight of the budget with emphasis on community partnerships and communication, financial stability, fiscally responsible choices that support our educational excellence. So first we have a budget study. I think Scott and I have talked at length about this, but continuing to study the long-term impact of our tax cap, depletion of reserves, review of our 5-year budget projections. I'm very eager to see what that's going to be looking like in the future. Future capital needs, changing needs. While I believe these are things that you do every year, we're transitioning assistant superintendents. So I think that it has to be in the forefront for this year. And we'll always continue to study the enrollment trends and how they're affecting our budgets and our per pupil cost review. That's on there. I'm not sure. I kept it on there because I think we need to continue looking at it. We had a lot of staffing decreases, and I think we're going to start to see those numbers changing, so I think it's just good for the board to remain on top of continuing to look at that and see if there's been any change. And then, of course, reviewing all of our fund balances, which even conversations like tonight with Mike asking specific questions, I think the board could use some more attention to that.
So I had a couple of thoughts here, because I agree with everything you said, and I think that in a way, the most important thing that we can do, because a lot of the other aspects will be folded into it, is really doing some serious work on a 5-year budget that reflects at least what we know about today regarding our enrollment trends and regarding what we can predict in terms of expenses going out. I think sometimes if the 5-year plan that we had didn't necessarily reflect those trends. And so looking at that a little bit more carefully could be a really good thing to do this year. And the enrollment study and the per pupil cost, in a way, are almost like sub-bullets to that.
They are.
Because I think they're sort of inputs to what the 5-year plan would be. And then the one thing that I thought maybe we should at least discuss to consider adding is some kind of a concept of thinking about the concept of finding efficiencies. And it doesn't need to be specific, because I think that would be the goal, is, are there places, we're not talking about cutting programs, we're not talking about scaling back what we're providing to students, but are there places where we can be smart and just find efficiencies in our budget, which as any good organization does, is just a natural part of just trying to be as lean as you possibly can.
Who would do that?
Well, I think that it would be probably the assistant superintendent of business.
Was that our goal?
Scott, I like it because it's a cycle of efficiency review.
Yeah, that's a good way to
Right,
phrase it.
if we have a cycle and we know that this year, and maybe it's going to take 2 years, we're going to be doing an efficiency review of transportation for 2 years, is it, so we can pick whatever are the areas we need to focus on, and whether it takes us a year or more, we could start to review the different areas that need that.
Right. I think that's a good way to frame it.
And we'd be able to rely on the leaders of those schools or those areas to help us.
I think
Find
we'd rely on
efficiency.
our assistant
Only our
superintendent of
assistant.
business to have that
Conversation.
dialogue. Yeah.
I would just note, I was looking at the enrollment numbers, looking at the kindergarten numbers,
I know.
they're light.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's behind them. I don't know whether they're going to be lighter or whether they're going to be heavier, but the enrollment study, to me, is not necessarily just something that's coming along for the ride. This is a serious issue.
It is.
I mean, if we're going to start running 3, 4, 5, 6 years of 130 kids per class, that's going to have dramatic impact in what we do. So I don't know whether we need to get our the Suffolk County BOCES enrollment projectors back to see what's going on. But those numbers, they really raise an alarm bell with me.
They're going to have to recalibrate their projections too when everybody gets their tax bills, next year, and we realize the complexities of those issues. So, demographers, whatever tools and software they're using, I don't know if they've, set the scale properly yet, given this impact to areas like ours.
The point I wanted to make was, and I understand and I appreciate the idea of having these topical boxes. See, I think the enrollment study, I think this is a very significant issue for the board. I think this is almost a goal in and of itself. I know maybe you want to keep it in there. I don't know if I feel that strongly about it. But I think we really have to pay very, very close attention to enrollment this year, because you don't want to miss the bus like I did tonight, and and miss the enrollment trends, because there's a trend, and maybe it's a blip, maybe it's a trend, but the numbers that we're seeing in the lower grades are going to have, if they continue, are going to have significant impact on what we're doing. So, I mean, if in a different year, I would say that's a goal. A detailed review of enrollment, the financial implications, whatever. If you want to keep it into this box, again, if this is where the way we're going, I guess it's all right. But I just want to say that I think this is a very, very important thing we have to do. And it's not just one of 4 or 5 things of equal weight. I think this is a very important issue this year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I feel like it's okay to leave here because it does link back to a set of financial decisions, but I think you're right. I mean, there's no doubt that it's got to continue to be a focus. I think it belongs on here, even though it's been on here for the last couple of years. It continues to belong on here, and we've got to do everything we can to get our arms around what's going on. And unfortunately, to Mike's point, there is an unknown around what the SALT deductibility is going to do, but it's certainly not going to help. And then there's always the question of future development that the town could have. There's a lot of different factors, but I think we need to study.
We don't know what the house sales are going to be for their first year. I mean, it's unknown. A lot of things that we took for granted 8, 12, 14, 15 years ago that gave a steady numbers in the 150s, 160s, 170s don't seem to be present now. And I don't know if they're coming back in the near future. So I just think this, to me, is an elevated issue. And I think I want to be in front of it. I want to understand what it means to the district. I want to understand what it means financially to the district. And I mean, I know we're going to discuss this at the next meeting, which is fine. I'm almost I almost want to have that issue carved out of this group of issues, but
But it is true.
let's see.
Because this is something that we've talked about for many years, right? That particular, but we really haven't really delved into it, right? So I'm with you.
When
on
you say
this.
delve into it, meaning.
What
if
are we
can
gonna do?
If
What-
we
yeah.
continue with these kindergarten numbers in the
What does-
next 4 years.
Right, what is that
Like,
gonna mean?
how is that going to
Right.
impact the district?
Right.
So I was seeing that as a fiscal goal.
It-
I mean, I think
I
it's
think
going
it
to
is.
affect our.
Right, that's where I
It-
think
I
about it too,
understand that, and I'm not telling you it isn't, but where I come from, in years past, I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, this would be a separate goal, because I think the importance of it to the district is, to me, a larger importance than some of these other per pupil course review and things, which, to me, you could argue are ongoing work of the board, may not necessarily be goals. I'm happy to keep them there.
Actually,
But-
those two
But what
things
is-
are directly
what is-
correlated.
Inextricably
Actually,
linked.
I would go back and say that per pupil cost might actually come out that the declining enrollment is
Yes.
the key issue there, and we need to, what I'm trying to say is I think it,
It's like a
there's a
symptom.
lot of counterbalances. We're talking about development. I mean, I've lived here for a long time. I'm seeing more development in this town than I've seen in the years that I've been here as far as housing development.
Yeah.
So that's funny that that's happening in the context of this macro change for the region and salt tax issue. So I think this is super, super complicated, but I think that per pupil piece will actually fit really into this, and that may be one of the driving factors, so.
I'm not saying take it out. I mean, we have, who knows what's going to happen over at Brynwood? Are they going to, I mean, all these, I'm hearing about the possibility of multiple resident dwellings being built in town, which could have impact on the enrollment. I don't know, but we need to put our hands around the facts, need to put our hands around the data, so we can assist the administration as our job is to make the appropriate plans, the appropriate recommendations, the appropriate decisions, that's all. I mean, it's something that I didn't really think we had to worry about years past. I think we have to worry about it now, and this is what happens. Different issues come up different years. So anyway, that's my pitch.
So I think it's clear that this has to be a major emphasis. We just need to put some thought into
That's the
where it
one.
falls and how some of these issues
I think
interrelate with each other.
What resonates, what Ira just said, is that different issues come up for different years. These goals just seem to be encompassing a lot, you know, with I don't know, like what I'm hearing is like key things are coming out. There are 4 or 5 key things, and to me, that's what goals are. They're bullet goals. You know, this just seems like it's encompasses, you know, it's wonderfully written, but, things we should be doing as a board anyhow, but, you know, if you're going to set goals for yourself, the key issues should be the ones that come out for that year. Is that what you're trying to say? I don't know.
Years ago, let me just give a little history on this, it may be helpful. Years ago, the board would develop its goals without the input of the administration. We would meet, we would talk, and there was always a difficulty to get these done by October. You know, really, it was a big deal. We would talk about getting these goals done, and then once we had our goals, we would share them with the administration, and we'd get their input. Sometimes they liked them, sometimes they didn't, sometimes they were far-fetched in terms of the manpower that would be required for the administration, whatever. But that's the way, and then over the last number of years, we sort of delegated our obligation to form our goals to the administration, saying, here, you take the first crack at it, come to us and we'll work it through, which maybe it's smart, maybe it's not, but that seems to be what's happened. And I think Jen has done a typical thorough job in coming to us with where she sees things. But again, these are our goals. You know, we have to be sure they lay out what we want. They emphasize the issues we think should be emphasized, understanding all along that things are going to happen during the course of this year we don't know yet, and may take more time than one of these goals will take. So I'm glad we're discussing it now. I know we'll discuss it next week and maybe the week after. There's no Nothing that said, there's nothing that is religious says we have to have it approved next week. These are our goals, so they have to reflect the consensus of the board as to what we want the goals to be, that's all.
We're utilizing one of the 21st century skills by collaborating on the goals.
I'm still looking for my typewriter ribbon.
No, I have to say, like, I do like the way it's evolved, that it does start with the administration
Yeah.
coming to us.
Yeah.
They're the ones on the ground here and no education inside and out. But I do like that we have this sort of push-pull then, back and forth about them. But I do like that they originally generate in administration.
It happened, it just started to develop that way, and no one seems to object to it. I certainly wouldn't be the one to take
Because
the
otherwise, I
laboring orders.
feel
to
like
write
if
the
it's
goals.
coming from us, we're going
Yeah.
to maybe, throw you for a loop and stuff that you guys aren't even, because now the board goals tie into the administration goals, tie into the teacher, like we are
But
well
I'll say this.
organized, unit now.
It may not be it may be a worthwhile exercise in years to come for the board to sit down and work through this a little bit, either in retreat or somewhere else, to really talk about board goals, rather than necessarily doing it this way.
You're saying that you mean the process of doing the board goals, not creating the board goals?
Well,
We couldn't do that
to
in
discuss
retreat, but
board
the
goals,
process.
no, to really discuss topics we may think are right for board goals. When we have what Jen's created here, which is a template that Jen wants to have, and as the years roll on, different sub-bullet points will fit into various templates. But she sees these items as the ongoing work of the board, with the sub-points being the annual work of the board. Perfectly valid way to go about it, I think. Nonetheless, I think in years to come, it may be helpful for us, knowing what the template is, to actually sit in advance and work it through a little bit. And how do we feel? Where do we think these things should come out, and what would we like to see added, without in any way derogating what the administration's doing? I think that's part of being a board member. And I think we've kind of let that slip a little bit over the years.
We just can't do that in retreat, I believe. I think that has to be in public.
Then it would be, wherever it would be,
Yeah,
that would have to be, but we'd have to give, really, a meeting would have to be dedicated to the goals in that context. It's something the board has to want to do. If they don't want to do it, don't do it. But it may be a helpful exercise to let us focus on the issues we see as goal-worthy, I guess, but.
Well, and there are lots of different ways we can think about doing this, in that we could have a discussion before anything's drafted in public, together with the administration, and then go back, this is for next, not for this year, and then go back and take a first crack at drafting it. But I do think that despite the fact that over the past few years, the administration's taken the first cut at it, no question
It's longer than that,
Oh, okay,
Scott.
well, however long it's been. I mean, I think it works in that ultimately, we are not going to approve anything unless we deem it to be consistent with the thoughts that we have. And so we have these discussions, so it still is our document at the end of the day. And it is a collaborative process, because you are the ones on the ground that are going to be, in many cases, doing the day-to-day work on pulling together this important information.
I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I'm in no way taking issue with what Jen's done, because she's done what we asked her to do and what has been done. I think she's been totally appropriate. I'm just saying, going forward, whether or not we as a board want to take a more ground-level, proactive look at the goals early on, rather than come and have these presented to us at this point.
Makes sense.
That's all. I think it's something we should, as board members, you may want to consider doing.
It's a worthwhile discussion to have.
I think it's part of our board member duties, but something to talk about.
And one thing we could do is we could talk about the process at the retreat. That is a lot of the time to talk about the process of how to do this even more collaboratively and efficiently.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Especially since it's a relatively young board.
I feel old.
Wait till June. That's what I wanted to say about this.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Helpful.
So for this goal, I am going to, with the exception of adding the cycle of efficiency review, leave things as they are so people can contemplate what you're, I mean, I think a lot of thoughts came out today, but there was no move in a specific direction. It's just a lot of thinking and conversation for the board to bring back together next time.
I think there was.
Did you have a specific recommendation?
There was a discussion whether or not, sorry, let me just scroll up here. Point 2, fiscal accountability and communications, whether the subpoints, any of those subpoints themselves should be a separate goal. Just something to be discussed. I don't think that, certainly there hasn't been any consensus on it, it's just been issues raised. Because the enrollment issue really has me, I have that front and center, that's a big issue, you guys.
Ira, when was the last time they were at that level?
Which, enrollment study?
Yes.
Probably back when we started talking about the bond issues, quite a number of years ago. Because that was certainly the key to preparing any bond referendum. You had to have the enrollment figures to justify.
That's different than, and the demographer, it's more.
It is, because you're saying if this continues, what does it look like for us financially in 5 years?
Okay.
So we can have a discussion just to think about whether there's a even better way to organize it, not with the benefit of this conversation, not to revamp it, but just to reorganize a little bit, so.
It might be a useful exercise, and we can talk more about it at the retreat, to maybe, ask everyone, all the board members to contribute what they think is a good goal, sort of do some sort of survey I don't know, that would be beneficial, just to put some ideas to like give to Jen, and then when she comes to us with the board goal, she sees what's on the minds of us, and is able to add them to what the administration thinks is pertinent.
I think on these issues, Lara,
Yeah.
the more give and take we can have among us
Yeah.
on these issues, it's very healthy. I really do. I mean, I think it's very healthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too, and I would be afraid if I developed a first draft of the board goals and everybody said they were very nice and have a nice night.
That would be pretty.
That would give me pause.
Okay.
All right, third, leadership development and succession planning. Just continuing to support leadership development in the district. This district has spent a significant amount of time in considering how to develop our leaders, and we've had a great succession planning. Always. Developing internal candidates, which is something that we spoke about last year, and I think we need to make a even more serious concerted effort to do. Support practices designed to ensure success of new and transitioning administrators. It doesn't feel like it, but we have a young team.
Yeah.
So Tim and I are spending a lot of time looking at how to help them think about leadership and to coach their progress. We have to keep doing that for a number of years. This year, Tim and I were talking about a pilot. We've been moving forward with this, the executive coaching model, really looking at a human-centered design to help administrators see the people that are behind the goal. What are the people involved ready to do? How can you help to lead them along? It's not just about having goals, it's about the people that you think are going to be a part of that goal setting with you. And I think that people had their eyes open to that. Very often, the board or Jen develops the first set of goals, the board revises it, I bring it to the administrators bring it to the teachers, and it's like this downward cycle, and we can't be considering it anymore. I mean, people have to be looking at their individual departments, the individual skill sets in those departments, and areas for growth that way, instead of just having everybody fit into a goal. Any comments about that?
No.
Of course, we can talk next time too, if nothing comes to mind now. And the goal we thought we were going to get rid of, the education reform and advocacy. Our areas of focus now, state funding continually, unfunded mandates, the new ESSA charges Tim's going to be sharing with us, the curriculum changes, APPR and testing. I think we really have to continue to participate in programs related to policy and advocacy and maintain these dialogues with legislators. And I think that last year, with the exception of the year that the PTSA was very active with the board regarding testing, last year, I felt that we had our hands in multiple areas of advocacy, and it felt very comfortable to do that. Whether it was meeting with local officials, and anything from impacting students to impacting our taxpayers. And I think that our realm has broadened in the areas that we need to be considering advocacy.
I would like to add one point within the box, which would be shared services. I think that's very important. I'm not always comfortable with what I hear coming out from Albany on the shared services discussion. So I think that ought to be part of this as well.
Any other comments?
You know, the only thing I would add to, just because it's a very specific, tangible thing that we talked about earlier in the meeting, is the TRS reserve, because that's important for us and be very helpful.
Very.
And we're close. It's like there is some momentum, but not enough, so.
Maybe we need to be a part of creating a greater momentum
Yeah.
instead of following.
Did you have something?
I was just gonna mention that,
Hey,
What
quiet.
do you have to say? Are we boring you?
No, that was a text.
I think it's important
Sorry, Mike.
that, given the high performance of the district, that it's our responsibility to maintain an active advocacy program. And, Scott, you've done a tremendous amount of work in that respect. And I think it's an important role for us to take a leadership position too. So.
So long as you're willing to put that time in, Scott.
With Lori as my.
And Lori also.
trusted
No, I
partner.
think it's great.
Great. So Scott, from now until the next board meeting, you and I will go over some of these
Exactly.
changes.
Yep, and then we can bring it back and
This
then.
was a great place to start.
Good discussion.
Good discussion,
Everybody.
very good discussion.
And I really like the concept of the board maybe looking at some of the larger topics and starting to think about, well, what is it that we're curious about for the following year? I mean, the timing of that is something that we have to consider. It's something that would kind of have to start occurring at the end of a school year,
Yes, but it also.
because it will carry over to October.
Correct.
We can't start now.
It
We
does
never get there.
typically result in a later adoption of the goals.
Yeah, right.
Which is not a crime in and of itself.
No, it's really not. We always just think of the first day of school like things are
Yeah,
running.
but-
in
Yeah.
actuality, we can look at,
Yeah,
for October or November on, what are the goals that
And
we think are attainable?
It's also ever evolving because things
Yeah.
come up and, so
That's a good point, Ira.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's something for the board to consider, and Robin mentioned it, is we have alignment with board goals, administrative goals, teacher goals. If we're starting on a later cycle, the administrators over the summer are developing goals after our retreat. So we just want to think about that cycle if it does impact that
Yeah.
alignment across the system, or else, we're having administrators and teachers develop goals, and if the board comes in 2 months later and has goals, and then we
Exactly.
start.
Well,
No,
what's
that's
True, because
that's-
this speaks to everything the administrators are doing right now.
So we anticipate the board goals as we help develop the goals.
But that's ultimately what
Teaching.
led to the administration sort of taking over the
Right.
initial
Yeah, because alignment's important with the system.
initial
Just have to
draft.
keep that in mind, it's complex, so.
Yeah.
It is. It's a good retreat topic to talk
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Well, at the retreat this year, we're going to talk about the roles of the committees.
Yep.
So it's committees and processes, I think.
That's great.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we're on to staff reports.
All right. So, summer projects, the board was very happy to go on a visitation to the schools at Coman Hill. We saw the new fencing around the playground. We saw the indoor playground, which now encompasses 3 old classroom spaces. That was a fantastic donation from the Byram Hills Education Foundation. And those kids are going to have the most spectacular year at Coman Hill. If I could go back in time, I would come in as a kindergarten student repeatedly. So we're very excited about the work at Coman Hill. At Wampus, parents can expect to see great changes in that building as well. This was aligned with our security measures. There's a completely different entryway with more security checkpoints and a movement of offices to really allow people in the community, parents, to show up to the schools and to have a space where they could go in and meet with administrators. So the offices are perfectly set up for kids with an assistant principal really accessible to children. We're excited by those changes. At HCC, we saw, thanks to the Education Foundation again, a completely renovated library space. Mike and I were commenting that most work facilities are not as amazing as HCC as far as their library is concerned, and the different places for kids to be working. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So again, thank you to the Education Foundation. We are also almost complete. I would say by mid-September, we will be complete with the new Wellness Center at Crittenden also, which was a donation from the BHEF. And at Byram Hills High School, students are, as long as they're not looking at their phones, they are going to notice a very new school setting when they walk in. The floors have been redone, the lighting has been redone, and what a difference it makes. It is bright and welcoming and wonderful, and we are near completion on our theater renovation. We anticipate that by November we'll be able to use that space. It is ready and waiting for final touches and seating, so we're looking forward to that over the next few months, and that was part of just our capital plan to continue to improve our facilities. So all of those have been pretty spectacular. We are ready to receive 2,302 students. I shared with the board the total enrollment. We know that enrollment is down for kindergarten. We were anticipating 147 students and now have a total enrollment of 131. So that's interesting. First grade and second grade wasn't such a big difference. The interesting part is that our enrollment has actually remained about the same or increased at Crittenden and remained about the same at the high school. So the one place that we're seeing this declining enrollment mostly is kindergarten, but Coleman Hill, which we'll see what happens cyclically with that. Tuesday, we have opening day for students. We are happy to welcome them back, although the summer probably seemed fleeting for them. Tomorrow, we welcome back all of our faculty, and Thursday as well, to do our planning for the arrival of our children. We have a lot of events in September people should pay attention to, whether it's going to be our wonderful Homecoming Spirit Week, where we are renting lights. We want all of our children who are playing sports in the fall season to play under the lights, and that was a great collaboration with a student who's going to be a senior this year. We're going to go watch him play football, but really a spectacular opportunity for this district to have opportunity for a lights event without what we know are the fiduciary concerns of having a full lights program at a district like ours. So looking forward to that. And the Wizards, the Byram Hills Education Foundation's one of their greatest fundraisers, which is tickets for the Wizards go like wildfire. And I just want to say to the public that we are excited about a back-to-school video I will send on the first day of school. And what I like about this video is I asked each principal to highlight what they think are the goals in their buildings for their children. So when parents see that video, they'll really get a sense of K-12, what's happening in our goal setting. And lastly, in addition to welcoming the students, I welcome again the support of the PTSA, the BHEF, and the boosters, along with our Board of Education, have dedicated countless hours, unbounded energy, all for the sake of making this such an incredible community. So I thank you in advance for all of your contributions this year. And to the board, I look forward to the second good year together.
Excellent.
I want to give the board an update on the ELA and mathematics 3 through 8 testing. As you know, last year the state changed the test from 3 days to 2 days. As a result, we just received results yesterday. I just got the file to me now. However, they're embargoed until the end of September, so I cannot release them. We cannot discuss them at public meetings. They can't be distributed to parents or students or third-party vendors. They can only be used for curriculum planning, for academic intervention services, or for teacher evaluation.
Do you know the reason for
Yeah,
the
what's the
embargo?
reason for the
They
embargo?
have to realign the scores, I
Oh, the
believe.
cut scores.
The cut scores, yeah.
Ah.
But they actually, well, they're giving out me the scores now, so they've done it, but now the state has to put together their reports and comparisons and do some analysis. So they're still crunching numbers and looking at their statewide data and figuring out how to present that to the public, I believe is what's happening. Because I do now have the performance levels. So they did all that, but it took them this long to do it. Normally, we receive these at the end of July, or we have in recent years. We've always been complaining that that's still too late to get the test scores at the end of July for tests that are giving in April and May.
And from what I've heard, the actual scoring of the exams happens very quickly.
Oh, it's, yeah,
Very
happens
quickly.
very
So this
quickly.
is all about trying to manage let's say analyze or manage, depending on what word you want to use, the statistics in terms
Exactly.
of the way they're presented and the cut scores.
Yeah.
And it is worrisome that it takes that many months to do that statistical analysis.
Yeah. Well, the state puts together about a 100-page PowerPoint presentation, which gives all the breakdown of demographics, this whole analysis of it. So part of it, I think, is their messaging.
Interesting.
When will
Let
the
you know
parents in the district be notified of their individual scores?
Not until the embargo is lifted, which the state's saying the end of September. We can't
Wow.
share these
By
publicly.
October, you know.
Yeah, we can't share these. So we can use it for placing kids in academic intervention.
Pretty, please?
I will give you an analysis in executive session. I can share them with
Yeah.
you. So I'll share once I haven't even looked at them. I haven't had a chance. I usually spend about a month and a half putting together the assessment report, which I usually would do in September with you. That'll be delayed. I'll probably get to it in October. But I will do my full analysis. I usually
Wow.
spend
You know,
the summer working on that.
This is obviously beyond our control, but when we put it in the bucket of advocacy,
Yeah.
I think that the state puts us in not the best predicament when we're using, because we have to, information about kids that the parent can't actually see for a month.
Exactly.
There's something wrong
I
with
know.
that.
Yeah, it is.
So
Even
that's
July,
something
we
that
were
should
still
express
complaining.
to our, to
Yeah.
Albany.
Yeah, we're like, July's too late. We plan ahead, so that's difficult. We're moving toward the computer. We're moving toward the computer-based
Yeah.
testing.
You swear
in
that
a-
much quicker.
We're moving toward the computer-based testing in a couple of years. There's still districts opting into that now. We've chosen to wait till the latest possible moment to do that because we don't feel the software's quite right. And you remember last year, or actually this year, there was some problems with the computer-based testing. So we're opting to wait. Even given that, I would hope that we can get the scores turned around really quickly once computer-based testing is done, you would think. But I don't think that's the real issue because,
The cut
as you said, they do it right away.
But even reading on a computer is very different than reading on a piece of paper for some.
Oh, yeah, and doing the math on a computer is different. We've looked at the tools they have and we're concerned that I'm not convinced that the students who take it on the computer-based testing perform as well as students who do it on paper and pencil. The state's giving us some data on it, but not the full analysis. That's my report. I'll share them.
Thank
Hopefully by
you.
next meeting, I'll at least have our summary results for you, let you know where we stand.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Just a couple of things. One, the board received the final school tax rates. We met with the assessors and tax collectors in July 12th, finalized the numbers. We ran the tax rates, and you can see in each of the towns it decreased very, very slightly, between 9 cents per thousand and $1.24 per thousand, depending on which town you're in. So these are the final rates that you have now. Moody's was mentioned earlier tonight. We did receive information from our financial advisor that we are one of 9 school districts in the state that still have the AAA rating, 4 in Westchester County, 5 on Long Island, 3 in Suffolk County, 2 in Nassau County. So we still are one of 9, so congratulations to the district on that.
Congratulations to Greg.
Congrats.
And to Greg.
Yeah.
And then summer work, we mentioned summer work before with the tour that the board did. You can see that there was a great deal of work that was done on the buildings, and congratulations and thanks.
Is that a copy of that movie's report that could be
Oh, sure.
shared with the
Yeah,
board?
yeah, we can send that out to the board.
Thank you.
Okay. I would also like to echo the comments, the tremendous amount of work that was done in the buildings, and you know, Steve is right on top of the game all the time. Very busy summer, very complex project that we are doing in the theater, and he's doing an outstanding job monitoring that. So kudos to Steve. Transportation, Tricia's been working on routing, maintenance on the buses, training drivers. We're all ready to go there. Again, sometimes it's hard to I guess people, they see school is out for the summer and they don't realize the amount of work that's going on in the background getting ready for the next school year.
It's a good name for a song, School's Out for Summer.
So she has done a great deal of work in transportation. And our auditors were in last week. Business office is one of our busiest times is in the summer, closing out one year, opening up the next year, purchasing, doing all the auditing, the state reporting, what have you. Auditors were in last week. Our exit conference was very good. They found basically nothing.
Great.
Susan is here. Congratulations again for a very clean audit. Does an outstanding job and was recognized as doing so by the auditor. So that's kudos to Susan.
Congratulations, Susan.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.
So that's it.
All right. Got it for staff reports? So we are on to item 14, communications to the board. There were two. One was a communication regarding high school athletics. It was then forwarded on to the administration for their attention. And then secondly, which we just got today, which we will distribute, just a communication from Southern Westchester BOCES.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead, you had another communication.
That communications that went to the board regarding the athletic issue, could we put that on exec for the next session? I would like to hear more about that.
Sure.
And what became of it? Any ultimate decisions?
There's another one that was put in front of me. It was from Shelley Mayer, the senator, and just reaching out to school districts in her area, her district, and said that she welcomes the opportunity to visit their school, meet with us, I guess come here. So if we wanted to contact her, just arrange a visit and a meeting, we could do that. Yes, tell us that.
I received a similar communication, and Janine's reaching out to her to come.
Oh, perfect.
Great,
Okay,
because
great.
she's on the education committee, so it's
Okay.
important.
Good.
Good, okay. So with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the board minutes from the July 10th, July 25th, and August 8th meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? I have one, but go ahead, Art.
Yeah, on the minutes for the reorganization meeting, I guess that's the July 10th. I guess it's page 2 of 13, the election of president, vice president. Under the president, it should sort of be redone. Below the colon, it should be the district clerk called for nominations for president. Mr. Scott Lee was nominated for president, and then after that, a motion was made by Schulman and seconded by Glatt to close nominations should go above the paragraph talking about the election. Because you're not going to close the nomination. The election is the last thing.
Okay.
And similarly for vice president, it should be the district clerk called for nominations for vice president. Lori Cano is nominated, and then the closed nomination should come above the motion, the election of the office. Okay? So those should be reorganized like that. That's really what happened.
Thank you.
And I just have a small change on the August 8th, page 3. There's a sentence that ends, if they are fee simple or tax. I think it should just say, if they should be taxed as fee simple.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what number was
I
that?
think it's page 3. I don't have it in front of me now, but I wrote, if they are fee simple or tax. That's what it says now.
Okay. And you want to change to?
Taxed as fee simple.
Right, if they
If
should
they're
be taxed as fee
taxed
simple.
as fee simple.
Oh yeah, that's in item 7.1,
Ah,
the third line.
thank you. That's a much better way to describe it.
Yes.
So with those two suggested edits, all in favor of approving the minutes? All right, motion passed. And that brings us to adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
But before you do that, just
Yes.
want to read the executive session items again.
Sure.
That we,
Of course. So the executive session items were, that we met earlier on was 3.1, district matter, district revenue, 3.2, budget matter, fund allocation, 3.3, budget matter, district insurance, 3.4, legal matter, individual employee, 3.5, personnel matter, retired employee, 3.6, district matter, administrative recruitment.
before we adjourn, I just want to note for the record the untimely passing of Nancy Cornelius, who was very, very active in many areas in the board, in the Byram Hill School District for many, many years. And our condolences go out to her family.
Thank you. So motion to adjourn,
So moved.
all in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Good night.